It started with a phone call on a quiet Wednesday afternoon. I remember the way she answered it. The way her face lit up like she'd just heard she won the lottery. And in a way, she had. Because when she hung up the phone, she turned to me with this strange expression, a mix of disbelief and delight, and said, "My uncle in Florida died. He left me everything." And I blinked, trying to process the words, everything. What does that even mean? She smiled and explained. He never had kids. I was his favorite niece. The lawyers say it's about $300,000, and my heart sank a little. Not because I wasn't happy for her, but because something in her eyes had changed, something I hadn't seen before, like a door had opened and I was no longer invited inside. The following days were a blur of phone calls, legal documents, notary appointments. She was suddenly busy all the time, distracted, distant. The woman I had shared a home with for 8 years was turning into someone I barely recognized. She stopped cooking dinner, started going out more, said she needed space to think, and I gave it to her, not realizing that I was slowly being erased from the picture. I remember sitting at the kitchen table one night, watching her scroll through luxury handbags on her phone, laughing at something on Instagram, while I sat there like a ghost, like a shadow from a life that was already slipping through my fingers. We had always made decisions together, talked about money, future plans, but now she acted like this was hers and hers alone, and maybe legally it was, but I kept hoping she'd come back down to earth, that this sudden wealth wouldn't change what we had. I didn't understand it then, but I was already becoming irrelevant, background noise to her new chapter, and I could feel it every time she brushed past me without a word, every time she locked her phone when I entered the room, every time she smiled at a text that wasn't from me. It's not the money that ruins people. It's the illusion of freedom it gives them, the fantasy of reinvention, and she was chasing that fantasy with everything she had. Even if it meant burning our life to the ground, it didn't happen all at once. But when I look back, it feels like it did. Like one day, we were still eating dinner together, laughing at old sitcoms, sharing lazy Sundays in bed, and the next, she was sleeping on the edge of the mattress, facing the wall, her body rigid like I was some stranger who wandered into her space. I tried to tell myself she was just overwhelmed with everything, that maybe the legal process and the sudden shift in her life had unsettled her. But that excuse wore thin real fast. The truth is, she didn't even try to hide it anymore. She stopped calling me babe, stopped kissing me goodbye. Her eyes didn't light up when I walked into the room. They barely even acknowledged I was there. And the worst part, she didn't seem to care that I noticed. I remember one night, she came home late, her perfume heavier than usual, her lipstick smudged like she'd wiped it off in a hurry. And when I asked where she'd been, she shrugged. Out with friends, but she wouldn't name them, wouldn't look me in the eye. And when I pushed, she exploded. Why do you care so much? It's my life, my money. I need time for myself. I was stunned. We'd been married 8 years, lived through job losses, deaths in the family, late night emergency room visits, and now suddenly I was intruding by asking where my wife had been. I felt like I was living with a stranger who wore her face. Someone cold and mechanical, like everything we'd built meant nothing. And deep down, I started to fear that she already had one foot out the door. She stopped doing laundry, started talking about downsizing, and every conversation ended in tension or silence. I caught her one night texting someone, smiling at her phone, and when I asked who it was, she snapped, "You're suffocating me," as if I was the problem, as if I was choking her with my presence. And that's when I realized she had changed, but not because of grief or stress. It was because the money had unlocked something in her, some hidden version of herself that had always wanted more attention, more luxury, more freedom, and less of me. I didn't say it out loud, but that night I knew she was gone. The woman I loved wasn't there anymore, just her body, her voice, and the echo of our past. I always thought this house was ours. We'd painted the walls together, argued over furniture, made memories in every damn room. But it turns out I was just a tenant in someone else's kingdom. I came home one afternoon, and she was standing by the kitchen counter with a manila envelope in her hand. and a look on her face, like she was about to tell me my dog died. She said we needed to talk, and those words alone made my stomach drop. I knew what was coming. I just didn't want to hear it. She told me she needed space, that things hadn't been right for a long time, that she felt trapped in a life she didn't choose. And I wanted to scream. What do you mean didn't choose? We built this life brick by brick, but she wouldn't hear it. She kept repeating the same cold lines, like she'd rehearsed them. And then she handed me the envelope. Inside were papers from her lawyer. She was formally asking me to leave. The house was in her name, had always been in her name. Something I had agreed 2 years ago, because I trusted her, because I believed in us. I felt like a fool, standing there holding the evidence of my own stupidity, while she looked at me like I was a burden she finally had the strength to shake off. I asked her if there was someone else, and she didn't even flinch, just said, "That's none of your business." And I swear I felt something crack inside me. Not just heartbreak, but humiliation, betrayal layered on betrayal. I asked if we could talk, go to therapy, figure it out, and she laughed. Actually laughed, and said, "I've already moved on." She told me I had a week to gather my things, and when I hesitated, she warned that if I didn't cooperate she'd have me removed, like I was some squatter in the place I'd called home for nearly a decade. I packed that night, not because I was ready, but because I had no fight left in me. I slept in my car for 2 days after that, staring at the ceiling, wondering how everything unraveled so fast. And the only answer I kept coming back to was the inheritance. The money gave her the wings to fly, and she didn't care who she left burning on the ground. I remember the cold of that first night like it was stitched into my bones. I parked down by the lake, windows cracked just enough to breathe without fogging everything up, and laid back in the seat trying to pretend like this was just temporary, like I was on some weird camping trip and would go back home in the morning. But there was no home anymore. Not for me. The house I spent 8 years building a life in had spit me out like I was nothing, and the woman I trusted with every part of me had turned into a stranger overnight. I had no plan, just a few bags of clothes, my laptop, and a toothbrush in the glove compartment. I kept replaying her words in my head, that cold flat voice saying, "You have a week," and the way she looked past me when I begged her to talk, like I was already gone, like I didn't exist anymore. I wanted to hate her. God knows I did. But hate is heavy and I was already drowning in so much grief I could barely breathe. I called a couple of friends the next day, but lied through my teeth. Told them I was just going through a rough patch and needed to crash for a bit. But the shame, the humiliation of admitting that your own wife kicked you out after getting rich, it was too much. So I just kept to myself. Drove around during the day, parked in different places at night. Sometimes gas stations, sometimes grocery store parking lots. I stopped shaving, didn't care what I looked like. I was invisible anyway. Days blurred together like a long grey smear, and every time I tried to imagine what she was doing, if she was with someone, if she even thought about me, it felt like knives twisting in my gut. She hadn't called, hadn't texted, hadn't shown a sliver of care, like he'd been a shadow in her life she could simply walk away from. I started applying for temp jobs, anything to keep my mind off things and maybe get a motel for a night or two. But the interviews were brutal, trying to smile and pretend I wasn't living out of a car while my ex-wife was probably popping champagne in some fancy condo with her new guy. Every time I looked at myself in the rearview mirror, I saw a different man, someone older, broken, someone I didn't recognize. And that terrified me more than anything, because if I didn't even know who I was anymore, how the hell was I supposed to rebuild my life? I hit rock bottom one night when I got food poisoning from some gas station sandwich and spent hours throwing up in a public restroom, dizzy, dehydrated, and alone. I remember sitting on that cold tile floor thinking, this is it. This is how far I've fallen. And still, she didn't care. Not a text. Not a call, nothing, like I never mattered. But something shifted in me after that night. A tiny ember of anger, of resolve. I wasn't going to stay broken. I wasn't going to let her story be the final chapter of my life. She might push me out of her world, But I still had mine. I still had time. I still had strength buried somewhere under all the hurt. And maybe, just maybe, I was going to find a way to rise again, not for her, but for me, because no one else was coming to save me. I didn't want to believe it at first. I told myself I was paranoid, sleep-deprived, angry, but deep down I knew it. The signs had always been there, and now they screamed at me every time I closed my eyes. The way she used to laugh at his texts even though she said they were nothing, the sudden nights she'd stay late at work or need space, the way her phone was always turned down when I walked in the room. And now, just weeks after throwing me out like trash, she was seen with him, not hiding it, not even trying. Someone from our office ran into them at a cafe and didn't hesitate to tell me about it. Said they looked close, like they'd always belonged together, like I had been the mistake, the placeholder. And I swear something inside me cracked when I heard it, not because I still loved her, not anymore, but because I had been lied to so easily, so thoroughly, and had believed every word, every I love you, every excuse, for 8 damn years. I thought we were building something. I thought we were partners. I thought she had my back like I had hers. And instead she'd been plotting an exit, waiting for the money, waiting for a reason to trade me in for someone she used to cry about hating. It wasn't just betrayal. It was humiliation, like my whole marriage had been a con, and I was the fool who never saw it coming. And the worst part was remembering how I used to comfort her about him, how I used to say she was better off without him, how I held her when she claimed he hurt her. Now she was in his arms again, probably saying the same things about me, rewriting the story, so I was the villain and he was the savior. And maybe that's what made me angrier than anything, the rewriting of truth, the way she'd twisted it so easily, so comfortably, like I never meant anything, like I was just a phase she got over. I wanted to confront her, to scream, to ask her why, but what good would it do? She was gone. She had her money, her new life, her old lover, and I was sleeping in parking lots, wondering how the hell it had come to this. I started keeping a notebook, writing everything down, every memory, every warning sign I ignored, not because I wanted revenge, not yet, but because I needed to see it all laid out. I needed to understand the truth, and with every page I filled, my anger sharpened into focus. She thought she won. She thought it'd disappear quietly, broken and forgotten. But she didn't know me like she thought she did. She didn't see what was coming. Because now I had nothing left to lose, and men with nothing to lose are dangerous. The basement smelled like old concrete, unforgotten memories. There was a leaking pipe in the corner that made a slow rhythmic drip through the night, and a single mattress on the floor with a blanket too thin for the cold. But it was mine. It was something. And after nights in the back seat of my car, or on friends' couches pretending to be okay, it felt like a step forward, pathetic maybe, but still forward. The friend who let me stay didn't ask questions, just handed me the spare key and said I could crash as long as I needed. I told him I wouldn't be long, even though I had no plan, no job, no income, and barely any clothes except for what I'd grabbed before she threw me out. My phone was disconnected, my savings were gone. And yet something in me felt strangely alive. Maybe it was because there was no one left to pretend for, no expectations to meet. I was just a man in a basement with nothing but time and anger. And that can be a dangerous mix. I spent days walking around the city, filling out job applications for places that would barely look at me, and nights laying on that mattress staring at the ceiling thinking about everything I ignored during those 8 years, the slow erosion of respect, the lies she told so effortlessly, the way she twisted my love into weakness and called it my fault when things got hard. And all I could think was, never again. I will never let someone strip me down like that again. I will rebuild piece by piece even if it takes years. And I started with the basics. I got a job at a hardware store stocking shelves overnight. Not glamorous, but it paid enough to eat and pay my friend a little rent. I kept my head down, showed up early, left late, learned everything I could about tools, repairs, structures, and I started working out again, using the old weights the store was throwing away, lifting in the basement at night, burning off the bitterness, reshaping the anger into muscle, into momentum, into something I could control, and slowly my mind started clearing. I stopped obsessing about where she was, what she was doing, who she was with, because it didn't matter anymore. She had her choice, and I had mine, and I chose to survive. I chose to fight, not for her, not even for revenge yet, but for myself, because if I didn't stand up now I never would. And deep down I knew something she didn't. I wasn't done, not even close. She thought I was broken, but I was just getting started. And when I came back it wouldn't be as the man she left behind. It would be as someone she wouldn't even recognize. And that thought kept me going. It fueled me when my arms gave out from push-ups, when I was too tired to stand during shifts, when I opened my phone hoping for a message that never came. It reminded me that pain can be a forge if you let it. And I was being reforged, not ruined, but remade. It started with a message from a mutual acquaintance, someone I hadn't heard from in years. It just said, "Hey man, you seen what's going on with her?" And there was a screenshot attached from social media, her profile now private, but someone had saved the post. It was vague and whiny, talking about how people change, and how you can give your all and still be betrayed. I almost laughed out loud. The irony of her playing the victim after what she did to me was beyond absurd. But it piqued my curiosity and I started paying attention. Not because I missed her, not even because I cared, but because I wanted to see the truth unfold. The truth that money doesn't buy happiness and betrayal doesn't come without consequences. Over the next few weeks I heard more, little pieces from friends of friends. Stories of how she and her new man, the ex she ran to, were already fighting. That the money she thought would last forever was bleeding away fast. He didn't work, never did, and now with access to her new wealth, he was spending like a king, buying himself toys, disappearing for nights, treating her not like a queen, but like a servant, and suddenly she wasn't the confident woman who threw me out. She was the one being used, discarded, humiliated, and I won't lie, I felt nothing for her pain, not anymore. I didn't gloat, I didn't celebrate, but I didn't hurt either, because I had already buried that part of me, the part that once loved her, trusted her, built a future with her, and now all I saw was karma playing out in real time, and the best part was, I didn't even have to lift a finger. She was destroying herself, just like I knew she would. Because she never valued anything real, only appearances, money, control. But when the shine faded, and she was left with a man who only loved what she had, not who she was, it all crumbled, just like us. Only now, there was no one to catch her. I was gone, and no one else cared enough. Her family barely spoke to her after what she did. Most of our friends took my side quietly, even if they didn't say it out loud. They knew what kind of woman she had become, and as she fell, I kept building, kept working, saving money, gaining strength. Every rep in the basement, every hour at work was a brick in the wall between who I used to be and who I was becoming. And the more I changed, the more I realized I didn't want her back, not even for revenge. I didn't want to prove anything to her. I wanted to prove it to myself, that I was more than what she left behind, more than her mistake. And one night, as I sat in silence with a bowl of rice and eggs after another long shift, I got a message from a number I didn't recognize, just one line, "Can we talk?" And I knew without even opening it who it was. And for the first time in a long time, I smiled, not because I missed her, but because the game had finally flipped. The message blinked on my phone screen like a signal in the dark. Simple, 3 words, "Can we talk?" I stared at it for what felt like hours, wondering if it was a trick, a setup, or something genuine. The woman who kicked me out, who destroyed everything we built, suddenly wanted to open a line of communication. I had no idea what to expect, but something deep inside told me this was a moment, a turning point. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I sat there, fingers hovering, memories flooding back, the good and the bad, the fights, the laughter, the nights when we thought we were invincible, but also the betrayal, the coldness, the lie. I told myself to be careful, to keep my guard up, because if she thought she could walk back into my life with a simple text, she was dead wrong, I replied. When and where? Keeping it neutral, detached, not giving anything away. She answered quickly, suggesting a small cafe on the edge of town, a place we used to go years ago. I spent the whole day pacing, rehearsing what I would say, how I would protect myself from getting hurt again. When the moment came, I was calm, colder than I expected. She walked in looking different, thinner, ice-tired, no makeup, no smile, just a look of someone who'd been through hell. She started talking almost immediately, words tumbling out, apologies mixed with excuses, talking about how she'd made mistakes, how she thought money would solve everything, how she'd been blind to what really mattered. I listened, not interrupting, not judging, just hearing. And when she finally looked up and asked if there was any chance for us, I told her the truth, that I didn't know yet, that I needed time, that trust once broken isn't something you just fix with words. She nodded, tears in her eyes, and I could see the real pain behind her facade. But I wasn't done. I told her I'd been through hell too, sleeping in cars, working nights, fighting to rebuild myself from scratch, and that I wasn't the same man she left behind. That if we were to even try, it had to be on new terms, on my terms. She swallowed hard, agreed, and for the first time since it all started, there was a sliver of hope, not a promise, but a possibility. And as I walked away from that cafe, I realized I wasn't just walking back into a conversation. I was stepping into a battlefield, and I was ready for war. I didn't want to play the victim anymore. I wasn't going to beg or plead or cry over what she did, but I wasn't going to let her rewrite history either. The first step was gathering a truth. I started digging through old messages, bank statements, anything that would show the cracks in her story. What I found wasn't pretty. Transfers to accounts I didn't know, secret calls late at night, receipts for luxury items bought without a word, lies piled on lies. The woman who told me she loved me was living a double life. And I wasn't blind anymore. I confronted her one evening after work, sitting across from her at that same cafe, the air thick with tension. I laid out everything I knew, every detail I uncovered, watching her face flicker from surprise to anger to desperation. She tried to deny it, twist it, say it was just business, but the truth has a way of choking out lies. I told her I wasn't here to destroy her, but to protect myself, to make sure I wasn't the fool anymore. She begged for forgiveness, promised change, but I saw the cracks in her eyes, the hesitation, the part of her that still clung to the old power dynamic, where she could hurt and run and come back on her terms. I told her this wasn't a game anymore, this was real life, and if she wanted a place in it, she had to play by my rules. For the first time, she listened, maybe because she was starting to lose control, maybe because the fog was slipping, but I felt something shift between us. Not love, not even trust, but respect, the kind born from facing the truth and standing your ground. And in that moment, I knew I was no longer the man she left behind. I was the man she needed to reckon with. And this was just the beginning. The verdict came on a rainy Thursday, poetic in its timing, like the sky itself wanted to wash away everything she'd built on lies and betrayal. The court ruled in my favor, recognizing my financial contributions, the countless bank transfers, the renovations I paid for, the years of sweat equity poured into that house. Despite her name on the deed, the judge saw the truth and ordered the property returned to me. She had 30 days to vacate. No appeals, no extensions, just the cold finality of justice. I didn't gloat, didn't smile, but inside I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace, not revenge, not satisfaction, just peace. She was served the papers in person, and from what I heard, she broke down crying in the hallway, screaming that it wasn't fair, that I was taking everything from her. But the truth was, she had already thrown everything away the day she left me for someone who disappeared, the moment her bank balance hit zero. Yes, the lover she chose over me vanished when the inheritance dried up, blocked her number, ghosted her completely. And the so-called friends who cheered her on back then, They were nowhere to be found now. She called them, begged for help, but doors stayed shut, phones unanswered, invitations ignored. She had no one left, not even her own family, who'd grown tired of the drama. I heard through the grapevine that she was couch surfing, sleeping on a mattress in someone's basement, looking older than her years. Her pride crumbled, her looks faded, her world collapsed, and I had rebuilt mine, brick by brick, stronger than ever. I moved back into my house, no, my home, and didn't change a thing, because I didn't need to erase the past. I'd conquered it. One morning I saw her from my window, standing across the street, just standing there in the rain, no umbrella, no direction, just watching, as if trying to understand how it all slipped away. I didn't go out, didn't wave, didn't offer a word, because some silences speak louder than anything. And that day, the silence between us was deafening, final. She lost the house, the money, the lover, the friends, the reputation, and me. But I didn't lose myself. And that was the difference, the only difference that ever truly mattered. The first night alone in my house after the court ruling was quiet in a way I hadn't known in years. Not empty, not lonely, just still, like the building itself was finally breathing easy again. As if the walls had been holding their breath for 8 long years. I made no dramatic changes, no new paint, no renovations. I didn't need a fresh start. I needed ownership of my past, and I had that now. I sat at the kitchen table with a glass of bourbon, not to celebrate, but to reflect. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was honest. For the first time in a long time, everything around me was real, mine, earned. I started rebuilding quietly, methodically, day by day. I returned to routines I once loved, long walks, early mornings, reading without distraction. I reconnected with old friends, not the kind who cheered from the sidelines, but the ones who stayed silent, respectful, waiting until I was ready to speak. Some of them admitted they'd seen it coming, but didn't want to interfere. I didn't blame them. We all see the fire differently when we're not the ones burning in it. I began volunteering weekends at a local community group for men recovering from divorce or betrayal. Not because I needed therapy, but because I knew how rare it was to hear the truth from someone who's been there. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't broken. I was just honest, and that meant something to those guys. They started calling me the calm one, because I didn't rant, didn't curse her name. I just told the truth, that she left, that she lied, and that I survived, stronger, sharper, quieter. One day a younger man came to the group, shaken, pale, clearly at the start of his own nightmare, and after one meeting he came up to me and said, "I hope I end up like you." It hit me harder than any insult she ever threw at me, because in that moment I realized I hadn't just survived, I had become someone worth looking up to. Word got around, and I started speaking at other small events, just telling my story, not for pity, not for applause, but because the truth is contagious when spoken with clarity. And each time I spoke, her face drifted further from my memory, no longer sharp, no longer painful, just irrelevant. I heard through someone that she tried reaching out to mutual friends, but they didn't answer, not because I told them to. I never asked for sides, but because betrayal leaves a stink that even time can't wash away. One friend told me she ran into her at a stall, looking thinner, quieter, shopping with food stamps, and when she noticed him, she turned away fast, ashamed, not of poverty, but of how far she had fallen by her own hand. She didn't just lose the house. She lost the version of herself she thought was untouchable. I didn't celebrate that, but I also didn't pretend to care. I'd moved on. I'd built a new version of myself, not out of spite, but out of self-respect, and there was no room for her in that version. No nostalgia, no what-ifs. I even started dating again, slowly, carefully, no rushing, just conversations, connections, small smiles that didn't feel like lies. I never spoke of my ex unless asked, and even then I kept it simple. She left, and I lived. That's all they needed to know. The rest was written in the way I carried myself. The way I showed up on time, listened without judgment, spoke with purpose. I was no longer the man who begged her to stay, or the one she walked over. I was the man who walked forward, alone at first, then with strength, and eventually with peace. No revenge, no grand final scene, just silence where her voice used to echo. And that silence, in the end, was the loudest justice of all.